Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast, brought to you in part by our official partner, StubHub. Celebrate summer with a game or show. Save on tickets at StubHub. Find out more information over on our website, steelcityunderground.com/tickets. I am your host, Joe Kuzma. I'm going to say co-host because I have my usual co-host back, Brian E. Roach. What's going on, Brian?
As always, it's a lovely day here in South Jersey. It's warm, it's beautiful, and I'm looking forward to the fall when the weather is miserable and the only thing that matters is occurring, which is, of course, Steelers football.
That's correct. There are only 3 seasons. It says it on my sign in the other room here, and right above the doorway, I believe it says spring. It says winter, spring, summer, and football. So
Yep.
That's all that matters. I agree with you. We're going to be talking about some stuff that doesn't matter. At least I don't think it's a matter of life and death or either wins or losses on the football field today, right?
Absolutely not. This is the most doesn't matter thing we may ever talk about.
No, that's not true because we were using Top Gun references with one another, and that doesn't really matter to anything. But we're retiring that, just to let everybody know. I don't think we're doing the Top Gun thing anymore. I will no longer be known as Maverick, and you will no longer be Goose. You'll just be Garth, and I will be Wayne, and this will be Steelers World. Party time, excellent.
There you go, party time. I am not Garth.
No, nor do I have the hair of either of those guys. And for anyone who is younger than us, they're probably like, what are these guys even talking about? But if you knew what Top Gun was, I think it's a safe reference to go with Wayne's World.
Yeah, I would think so.
So today, we want to complain about stuff. What really grinds my gears. You know what it is? It's the NFL Top 100. It's more like the let's take my small 3.5-year-old daughter, put a dart in her. Well, you know what? I'll even use a good example. She was at her cousin's birthday party maybe about 2 weekends ago, and they have a piñata. And he turned 5. It was a big number 5 hanging there outside, like on the garage or something. I don't remember what it was. And it's hanging, and all the kids are trying to take a whack at it with a bat. All the kids are the same age. This is the way I think they come up with the NFL Top 100. It's, well, you hit so-and-so's name, so they're right on there. Just spin someone around blindfolded 3 times and hope they throw a dart at someone's name, not at an actual person that's standing by watching. Because most of this doesn't make sense, and I do believe, was it J.J. Watt? I don't know. There's so many players through the years that have said, I've never been asked about any of this, so I don't know, man. This is pretty wild.
I believe that we need to call for a congressional investigation of this list. We need to see the votes. I want the tabulations in front of us. I don't buy this. Not for a second. Show me the votes.
You know what? I don't know that a congressional anything will get us anywhere. What we're going to end up with is one side that says that the players do vote, another side that says that they do not vote, and we still won't know anything different. They'll just keep the information to themselves. We will be in the dark. But what we do know is it 4 Pittsburgh Steelers make the top 100? That almost seems impossible. It should be like 53, in my opinion. So I'm going full homer today. But you know what? There were some snubs. So let's actually just mention real quick, for those who weren't paying attention, living under a rock, and didn't hear the rest of Steelers Nation complaining via social media, 2 players did in fact make the top 10. They were Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. We're going to hold them off for last because, well, they weren't named top in their position among their peers, which we think is just total. I said today's show would probably make me swear if there ever was one, and that's because we'll get to something else here too if we have time. And then there's Ben Roethlisberger. What is he, like number 22 on the list?
Yes.
And then David DeCastro, somewhere like
90s.
Yeah, he's so far down the list.
97.
May as well not even count. So it's good that he got some recognition. He's one of the best guards in the league, but this list really doesn't cater or pander to offensive linemen for the most part. They are just the unsung heroes with very little recognition, but David DeCastro does make that list. But how about some of the guys who did not make the list? Marquise Pouncey, maybe one of the best centers. And, well, let's go with one of your favorite guys, for example. You know who I'm nudging you towards?
Cam Hayward.
Oh, well,
or
yeah,
Ryan Shazier.
That's the one. Although Cam was hurt, so I get it.
Cam was hurt. But let me just put it this way. If J.J. Watt can be on the list and high on the list, and he only played 3 games, well, Cam played way more games than 3. He should be on the list. I mean, Cam's not J.J. Watt, but and he was hurt for a good part of the year. But that just points out the silliness of this list of someone who played all of 3 games. I mean, come on. How many games did Peterson play last year? He's on the list.
Oh, I know, man. It really is. It's tough to take it seriously, and I think to myself, J.J. Watt, number 35, by the way, on this list. And you're absolutely right with Cam. But then you have Ryan Shazier, who, even though I still think he was snubbed being a Pro Bowl replacement player, he should have just been in, period. I mean, the guy
absolutely
3-4 games with interceptions, and I mean, nobody can do what he can do. He hits the gap. He just goes everywhere. He's like Troy version 2.0. Now, I'm not really ready to anoint him a future Hall of Famer, and he's not going to play safety either. But the guy, he makes things happen. He's a playmaker.
Absolutely. Now, there are 12 linebackers who made the top 100. 12. You mean to try and tell me that Ryan Shazier is not a top 12 linebacker in the league? And I will say that you are smoking crack.
Yeah.
He is.
Drugs aren't good.
Drugs are bad, okay?
Yeah, I mean, Shazier, it's just, I don't know. I mean, we could talk about this forever till we're blue in the face. It's a very speculative thing. I know why they do it. They have 10 weekends that they need to fill airtime with. And, some of the guys, they really joke about some of this, and then some of them are like, well, they take the recognition in stride and blah, blah, blah. But there are names that are on this list like every year. So, I mean, David DeCastro, we can't really say a whole lot. You're just lucky if you have an offensive lineman that gets on there. Like I said, Marquise Pouncey not being recognized in there. I want to say Travis Frederick or somebody, maybe one of the centers. Maybe
the only center. Only center on the list is Travis Frederick.
Yeah, from the Dallas Cowboys. So
yeah.
Whether that's fair or not, sure, whatever. We're going to talk about whether certain offensive lines are as good as people say in a little bit here. But Ben Roethlisberger is the one that really bites me every year. I think did he go up or he went down? He went or he stayed put. Maybe he went down.
I think he dropped one spot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Overall, it is
22.
He's never gotten the love he should get.
Never. And just so people understand this too, there's been some debate on, well, this is based on 2016 numbers, and that's going to come up when we talk about Lev Bell. I don't think it's just based on 2016 numbers, because this would be the top 100 players of 2016. You're trying to hedge a bet on what these guys will do in 2017. So even though Ben Roethlisberger, maybe not the greatest of years last year, but I put out an article on this almost every year that they've done this list, where is there really 6 guys or 7 guys better than Ben Roethlisberger? Well, finally, Ben Roethlisberger gets ranked ahead of Russell Wilson here. And then you go up the list and Drew Brees, and I'm like, okay, Drew Brees, this guy's always throwing for 5,000 yards, and I don't think the Saints are necessarily a just powerhouse of a team, at least not defensively. They haven't been winning or whatnot. I could get there. I think Drew Brees is a future Hall of Famer. He'll be in that discussion too. But Ben gets this team in the playoffs all the time, and Drew Brees doesn't. And then you move up the list, and I was debating on whether 2 of these names would show up, and actually both of them did. You have Dak Prescott at number 14 and Derek Carr at number 11. Brian, that's just crazy talk, Brian.
That in and of itself is insanity. Let's go back to a point that you brought up. If this is a projection, right? This is supposed to be a projection for 2017. Then you're going to say that Ben is going to be worse by a spot than he was last season in 2016, because the 2016 list was a projection for 2016, when he's going to get all his weapons back. He's going to have Martavis back. He's going to have a full boat of people to deal with. Le'Veon for a full season. We don't have to worry about suspensions. And yet you're going to say he's not going to be as good. Well, that doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, you take a guy like Derek Carr, and Derek Carr's season in 2017 or 2016 versus his last season, and he took a ridiculous jump, like, I don't know, from somewhere way down to 11.
89.
But his 89, 89 to 11. So that's a giant jump, and really his season is very similar to the season he had in 2015. He threw for less yards, but had a slightly higher completion percentage. He had less TDs in 2016 than he had in 2015. A slightly higher percentage rate or quarterback rate, and yet he leapfrogs up to 11. And this is a guy that's now coming off a major knee injury, and yet you're going to say he's going to be the 11th best player in the league next year, and what is it, the fourth best quarterback?
Yeah, fourth, because, we'll mention the other names here in a second, but just to get, you know what, Derek Carr, if you're going to project, okay, I get it. He's got, Amari Cooper, he's got Crabtree, Marshawn Lynch is supposedly going to come out of retirement, not have any rust, and be beast mode again. Don't ask me how that's going to happen, but they have an excellent offensive line. I'll give you a benefit of the doubt there. But if Marshawn Lynch is, in fact, that former player that he was, and they're going to hand off the ball, how does that make Derek Carr's numbers, his pedestrian numbers, any better than what they were? You can't project them to actually be higher. So, and then Dak, I mean, anybody you ask, do you honestly believe that Dallas Cowboys, looking at their schedule this year, are they going to win another? They're not going to go 13-3 again. I don't even think Cowboys fans expect them to win 13 games again. And there are other factors at play there as well with that offense. But it was, number 10 was Matt Ryan. And we're getting into the top 10. Now I could see that. He was in the MVP conversation. He led his team to the Super Bowl. Fine and dandy. And then there's always the love for – in fact, Matt Ryan wasn't even ranked last year, if you want to put that in perspective. Yeah. So Aaron Rodgers didn't move at all. He was sixth the year before, sixth again. He had a miserable year the previous year, and I said, if you're going to do it on projections, now he was all right last year, okay? But he had an off year in between, and they still ranked him sixth because I remember that from memory. And then, of course, you're going to put I don't want to say his name. Yeah.
Tom. How about Tommy? Let's just call him Tommy.
Tommy. I think of Tommy Maddox, though, and that just that makes me sad either way.
Well, we can't use TB. Certainly can't call him TB. That's Bradshaw. So how about Whiny?
Yeah, that's fine. The crybaby, whatever. You know what? A lot of people believe, and this can be a whole separate show on its own, about how the Patriots always improve, blah, 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 blah. And I could shoot some holes in that argument, too. Let's put it this way. They're hedging a lot of bets on guys that had, like, one big game, like James White or Coney Ealy. But regardless, Tom Brady last year barely threw any interceptions. I get it. But you know what? In the same hand, if you're going to take this, it was the same thing with the MVP conversation. It was like the guy was suspended 4 games. That was the knock on Lev Bell. You're not going to make him the MVP because he missed 4 games. Well, he missed 4 games. Okay, he's still Tom Brady. It's a projection of 2017. We're just going to assume that he just keeps getting better with age, like James Harrison. Okay, I could accept all that. Speaking of which, number 2 was Von Miller. Miller, bigger impact player than, I don't know, number 5, Khalil Mack. I don't know. I kind of had issues with some of that, too. I have issues with all of it, to be completely honest.
Well, I mean, yeah, let's see. Khalil Mack, Defensive Player of the Year. Von Miller, not the Defensive Player of the Year, but Von Miller is somehow ranked second. And that doesn't even get into the fact that, Dak comes in at 14 as a rookie. There's no way you can – off a single season, there's no way you can project his next season. Rookies tend to downgrade their second year. There is such a thing as a sophomore slump. It occurs, and part of that is because if they have a great freshman season, they're probably playing a weaker schedule. Next year is a tougher schedule, like you were talking about for the Cowboys. They're not going to have, they might win the division, but you know what? They might not. And they've got a tougher schedule. And I don't buy Dak Prescott at 14, just the same way that I don't buy Ezekiel Elliott at 7, not based on a single year's production.
No, not over number 9, Lev Bell, who, what was it? What was the numbers that we put out? We had a nice little somewhat Pro Football Focus-esque graphic where it was just like, let me just show Bell versus everybody else versus the other top 10 running back. Actually, it didn't matter. Top 10 players for all-purpose yards or top 10 running backs. It actually ended up being the same figure. Their average was 109. So the other 9 guys besides Le'Veon Bell, 157 scrimmage yards average per game. And, he didn't run for as many touchdowns as Zeke, but then again, he didn't play as many games as Zeke. All of his averages across the board higher than Ezekiel Elliott, and he caught about twice as many passes as well. He put up numbers that would be good for most teams' wide receiver number 1, and you have him as number 9, which is probably the biggest problem I have with this is not only just not being the top running back in this, you're going to project everything. You're going to project Ezekiel Elliott number 7 based on 1 year. You're going to put Dak Prescott at number 14 over guys like Aaron Donald, A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Luke Kuechly, Richard Sherman, Gronkowski. And I think a lot of Dak's success does ride on Zeke. But then again, you could say the same thing about Ben Roethlisberger. But the one guy I would probably – I wouldn't have minded as much if you would have flipped their positions. Antonio Brown comes in at number 4, which is where he was last year. If you would have had Bell come in at 4 and ahead of Zeke and you had AB maybe at 9, could maybe see it. I think we're just getting way too complacent with, what is it, Antonio Brown has put up numbers. Anytime I read something, it's like the most of this compared to any wide receiver in the last 3 or 4 seasons. His numbers are just absolutely ridiculous. And there's so many statistics that are just made up that people put out there that are attributed to him. I can't keep track of them.
Well, yeah, it's impossible. I mean, when they're manufactured statistics to a certain extent, but the bottom line is AB has been the most consistently productive receiver over the past X number of years, 4 or 5 years. Nobody has had seasons like he's had. And it's not just, take out all the crazy this many games for this many yards and this many catches in this many games. Just look at the overall annual numbers for the past 5 years or the past 4 years, and there's nothing to compare it to. They're better than anybody else has ever had over a 4-year span. But at the same time, I understand putting AB behind Julio Jones.
Maybe.
I can live with that better than I can live with Zeke over Le'Veon. I can live with that better than I can live with Dak Prescott and Derek Carr over Ben. But not that I am saying I agree with it, but I can sort of see the argument because Julio Jones is a fantastic receiver and he had a great year. But he did kind of disappear a little bit in the postseason. Okay, that being said.
Yeah, that being said, well, Julio and AB to me are like 2 different styles of players. I think
absolutely. I
think Bell is just a more complete back altogether than Ezekiel Elliott. It's nothing to take away from Ezekiel Elliott, but I had this. It was Bell ran for exactly 3 fewer yards per game on average than Elliott. And then in the receiving area, he had twice as many catches, as I said, and, he had 2 receiving touchdowns to Zeke's 1. When you get into comparing somebody like Julio Jones, who was considered a top wide receiver, as Elliott was considered a top running back, or the highest ranking on this list, Julio Jones only had 6 touchdowns, and AB had a dozen. So he had twice as many touchdowns. Now, Jones had 1,409 yards to AB's 1,284, but it was Antonio, I think, played 1 less game, and Antonio was 1 catch shy. If he would have played that final game against the Browns, he would have led the league in receptions. He was 106 to Larry Fitzgerald's 107. there's going to be some trade-off between those two guys. That's just the nature of the beast. If you look at all of the great receiving seasons in the last 5-10 years, a decade, and even all time, it's pretty much Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. When I look at all the things rushing, it's like, okay, there was this one statistic. What was it? The most I don't remember what it was, Brian, but Lev Bell did something that only Jim Brown did in that Buffalo Bills game. I'm trying to remember what it was. I know he had 298 yards from scrimmage or something like that.
All-purpose yards, yeah.
Something of that nature. And then, of course, Bell breaks his own franchise's playoff rushing record, not just the 1 week, back-to-back weeks against the Dolphins and the Chiefs. I mean, I don't know, man. What's the guy got to do to get some respect? This is why I say I need to see the votes, because I actually now need to see wherever the votes are being stored and counted. I need the surveillance tapes, because I'm sure Jerry Jones is sneaking into that room and stacking the vote count with Cowboys guys, because I think on this list there were 7 Cowboys. The Seahawks had the most guys on the top 100. They had 8. Next to that is the Cowboys, and then the Patriots at 6, and there were a couple other teams at 6, and the Steelers had 4. But, for the Cowboys to have that many players on this list, somebody is got a little Cowboy love going on, I think. Well, all of America votes, and they're America's team. That's the answer. So
yeah, okay.
I mean, if you really want to talk about respect here, and you're going to go with projections, and you're projecting yada yada yada. I made mention of beast mode being behind the Oakland Raiders line this upcoming season, and you want to make some other projections and say the Dallas Cowboys line is very stellar. Well, I hate to say we're going to change some gears over and point some fingers at Pro Football Focus for a study or a ranking of the 32 NFL teams' offensive line units that they just put out within the last few days. And I actually did a pretty in-depth article on this as well, because this was just one of the most ridiculous things I'd ever seen. And not for the reason of, well, it is where the Steelers ended up. So spoiler alert here, the Steelers were ranked 3rd, which you might be able to live with. You're thinking, okay, Joe, you just mentioned the Oakland Raiders. They don't give up a whole lot of sacks. They really help keep their quarterback upright. And the Cowboys, they won 13 games, and they shouldn't have too much of a fall off with La'el Collins coming in, and Elliott ran for all those touchdowns, and so those got to be the top 2 teams. Wrong. I think it was a total troll by PFF here, because they picked the Eagles number 1, which I just felt was that knife was just going into the Cowboys fans. It was like, now you got to see this article because the Eagles are number 1. But if you really want to tick off Pittsburgh Steelers fans, I told you I'm trying not to swear here today.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Browns are ranked as the 2nd best offensive line going into the 2017 season, and none of these guys have ever even played a snap together.
Well, here's the problem. Here's what, we quote Pro Football Focus a lot, and we look at the statistics a lot. And here's the problem with statistics. Statistics don't account for anything except for math. They don't take into account the ability for these guys to know each other and play well together. It doesn't take into, if you're just going to grade these guys out and say, okay, I added up the grades, or whatever weird wizardry they do behind the scenes to make these formulas that are going to determine this is what you're going to get. You're going to get things that, I'm sorry, by the end of next year, this will look foolish.
There's an awful lot of money invested in Pro Football Focus, both by, Chris Collinsworth owns it now. They have the deal with Sunday Night Football and NBC. And, somebody's really got a good con going there. And then there's people who pay for all the individual subscriptions for the statistics and whatnot, too. And just to read the synopsis off of this, I'm going to read both from the Steelers and from the Browns just to hammer my point across. And then I'm going to tell you the projected starters here for each of the offensive lines, and you tell me, you be the judge. So I'll try and be unbiased here, even though this is a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. This is a show geared and totally focused on only the Steelers, and we only believe that our guys are the best, as we said about the NFL Top 100. But Pro Football Focus says about the Steelers' offensive line, if you're projecting purely off the final 9 games from a season ago, the Steelers would be the number 1 line in the league. Wow, that sounds fantastic, although I'm reading this as bullet point number 3. Alejandro Villanueva came on extremely strong over that period, but his poor play from 2015, not 2016, drags them down a bit. Over the final 9-game stretch, he allowed just 12 pressures. If that level of play continues, Ben Roethlisberger will be a happy man. Sure, he will, but clearly you're thinking, well, if Big Al's going to drag them down and maybe he reverts back to not those previous 7 games of the 2016 season, but when he was bad, when he came in as a backup and wasn't even a starter and was a first-year left tackle in the NFL, if he reverts to that, then this is they can't be number 1. It's foolish. But for the Cleveland Browns, they say the offseason free agent spending spree could pay off huge dividends in Cleveland. J.C. Tretter and Kevin Zeitler both bring well above average grades from a season ago at center and guard, respectively. The only question mark comes at right tackle, where Sean Coleman looked at least competent in his 62 snaps as a rookie.
62 snaps. That could be what? 4 drives, 2 drives,
1 game,
1 game. This is how, like I said, this is how certain things just, when you look back on them, I get it. They're basing this off of like I said, whatever bizarro Harry Potter-esque formula that they have, and then they pronounce it in, offensive line-o, and it puts out this, who's the top ranked line. Here's the thing. We went into last season, right, talking about the fact that the offensive line for the Eagles was in disarray because they'd lost people left and right. So I know that they've got Jason Peters and that they've got some other halfway decent guys, but to put them up at the top seems crazy to me. But okay, that's how you're projecting it. Wonderful. I'm thrilled. But the Browns at number 2 for guys, the thing is, it takes time for a line to gel regardless. So even if these guys are all top guards and top tackles, they haven't played together. They haven't played, 1 snap together yet, because there's these 2 new free agents and other guys. It's going to take them time to gel, which means they're going to look bad for a little while probably. But, as they get together, they might be okay. But again, it's that reverse you're talking about. I'm going to use a positive projection for the Browns and say, hopefully they'll be good like they were just last year. I'm not going to say anything else. And based on just 62 snaps, maybe he'll be good. But, Alejandro Villanueva, who has consistently gotten better and has a work ethic that is probably rivaling Antonio Brown's, and has the dedication and the focus and the I guess the pride in his craft that he simply wants to be the best and he works towards it, somehow he's going to become a slacker.
The problem I have, too, is depth, and I didn't get into that with the article, but just talking about some of these guys on both sides of the line, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Steelers nearly set a franchise record. They sat Pouncey, and we saw how that didn't work out particularly well. And Landry Jones back there, too, and D'Angelo Williams. They struggled to run the ball. Oh, my God, that Week 17 game against Cleveland, there was 2 close calls where it was nearly a safety right on the goal line, and Landry was sacked 3 or 4 times. They nearly set the sack record. They went into that game with the least amount of sacks of any Steelers team ever. They ended up with 21. I think the record was 20. It's part of offensive game plan and the actual scheme with the line, but you put B.J. Finney in there instead of Marquise Pouncey. I still think you put B.J. Finney in there, and it's still better than this Browns line, because even going by the highest rated tackles, okay, you have Joe Thomas. He's a Pro Bowler. The guy doesn't miss any games. But according to PFF's own wizardry and magic and funny numbers, you have Andrew Whitworth from the Bengals. He's 98.0 pass block efficiency, right? David Bakhtiari from the Packers, 97.6. Trent Williams, another Pro Bowl guy, 97.4 from the Redskins. You mentioned Jason Peters with the Eagles, 97.0. But then there's Marcus Gilbert, the guy who gets no love, allows just 20 pressures all year, 96.7. He's 0.3 behind Jason Peters. Now, Gilbert missed a couple games, so Peters had more actual reps on the field by virtue of playing more time. But I mean, there isn't much separating these top guys, but do you notice in this top 5 there's a tackle missing from this list, and it's Joe Thomas. He's supposed to be the Pro Bowler. This is going to be the guy that's the anchor of this new Cleveland Browns offensive line. Now, we knew he had to fix this. Zeitler is a good guard, but you have a guy on the other side who missed, how many games did I say to Joel Bitonio? They just gave him this big 5-year, $51.2 million extension in the offseason. He's missed 17 games over the last 2 years. If you can't even be on the field, how could you even project that line to be intact and be good? So you have a guy who played 62 snaps total, who was inactive for 5 games until Joel got hurt. Liz Frank's surgery, by the way, out for the season, injured reserve. There's 2 guys have never been together. You bring in Zeitler, who come over from the Bengals, and Treader was a backup with the Packers. I forget the gentleman's name that's the center there that got hurt. But Treader himself, I'm going to pull this up. I got it somewhere down here. I think it was 33 games. Yeah, 33 games in 4 years he missed. 33 games in 4 years. Here's another guy that might not be healthy and might not be there on the field. What happens if he gets hurt again? Because their original plan was this first-round pick they had from a few years ago, Cam Irving, and he was terrible as a center. They've tried to play him everywhere on the line, and he's not even projected to start in any of those 5 spots. So they're totally screwed here, where I'm talking about B.J. Finney, who had very good high marks subbing in for Ramon Foster and playing in place of Marquise Pouncey as a center. Pouncey, stubbed his finger or something against the Ravens. Finney did very well, even by PFF's numbers and their ratings, that we have depth behind this line where the Browns are going out and getting guys. They're going to be together for the first time, and anything else they have behind there is going to be a disaster if one of those starters or projected starters gets hurt.
Yeah, and you talked about Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas has been around for 10 years, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say that over the last few years, his play has not been at the same level it was earlier in his career. But he's going to continue to make the Pro Bowl simply because his name is Joe Thomas, and people tend to vote for the people that they remember. And somebody has to make it from the Browns. So,
yeah, exactly. And speaking of guards, too, I mean, you have Marshall Yanda, and he from the Ravens, considered one of the best in the game right now. And you still have David DeCastro with the Steelers, as I said, Pro Bowler. We talked about Pouncey with the top 100, Pro Bowler. And on the other side of that, you have Ramon Foster, who has an 89.1. He's less than 3 points off of Yanda's grade as far as Pro Football Focus is concerned. So even these guys that aren't considered Pro Bowlers, they just told us here when I mentioned earlier that Alejandro Villanueva only allowed 12 pressures over 9 games. Now, I didn't have the number for how many he gave up in those previous 7, but for over half a year, he gave up less than Marcus Gilbert did, and Marcus Gilbert's one of the top-rated tackles in the league. So if he continues on that same pace, there's definite improvement there. I don't see how you can consider this guy a weak link, a converted defensive end and a tight end who didn't play football for how many years after coming back from being an Army Ranger. And you got to factor all of these things in. Or you have the guy, Sean Coleman, not active 5 games, 3rd round pick, I think, 4th round pick. Then he has to come in there because the other guy, who's also projected to start, breaks his leg or whatever. I mean, it's insanity. It just drives me crazy. And we're just talking about the Steelers here. The Cowboys are like 7th on this list, and the Raiders are further down, like 6th, 7th, or 8th too. It is just, I don't know where they pulled these numbers from. I'm going to assume it's from their backside.
Yeah, part of it is, I mean, I can see Dallas not being in the top 3 at this point for one reason and one reason only. They've lost a couple guys, and they have a couple guys that are question marks this year. They should be good. They've been good for a long period of times. The Raiders is actually more disturbing to me that's as far down as it is, because they have, again, they've invested in that line. It's a younger line. The Cowboys line is starting to age slightly. So you can see that. But you would think that these guys who are numbers guys, right? So you would think numbers guys understand trends. And Villanueva's trend line is not a heartbeat. It's not up and down. It's up. It's consistently, steadily progressing upwards. And so you cannot look at that trend line and go, well, maybe it'll change.
I was just reviewing this for some of the numbers that I had in the article, and Dave D., who's a frequent commenter over on SteelCityUnderground.com, I have to read this because this is perfect, and I think it'll sum everything we've just set up. He says, this is perhaps the, in caps, most ridiculous assessment I've seen this offseason, maybe in several offseasons. Amazing how someone could write that without spelling errors from the laughing shakedown that they had to experience, and that's what I think. I think it was just trolling at its finest. I sure hope that if anybody's paying the big bucks for that statistical analysis, we're going to see this week 1, by the way. This is going to be the Browns and the Steelers opening up in Cleveland. And it's just going to be, I think it's going to be embarrassing to see what Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Javon Hargrave, James Harrison. I mean, we may see TJ Watt just go off as a rookie just to start. May give us some false expectations for the other 15 games just based on how bad this is going to be. He's going to go up against like Sean Coleman. Are you kidding me? Or Bud Dupree or James Harrison or any of these guys. I wouldn't trust that guy against Anthony Chickillo at this point. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm ready to say party on, Wayne, because I need to move off of this before I go like punch a puppy or something in anger at how ridiculous this is.
Absolutely. I again, this is the downside of the off season. Is the speculation and insanity that continues to occur as we progress forward. And, I think that the thing to try and remember is these are all, not to steal a phrase from somebody, but this is all fake news.
Yeah, there we go, man. We're just tying it all in today. I mean, everybody else gets to talk politics. I mean, if you're NFL or sports writers or whatever, anywhere you turn, we try to keep this politics free because you know what? We understand you enjoy your Steelers, you enjoy your football, and nobody's enjoying anything in politics. So me and Brian actually set off the air. If we were to do a politics show, and me and Brian have different ideologies, but obviously you could tell we get along, we said we would talk for hours, which we've already done about this top 100 list and this offensive ranking. So we will let you find folks go, and we're going to catch you again after, we have another special guest that's going to be on here, between your 4th of July weekend. You're going to hear on Monday who that is, and then we're going to catch you probably again on the flip side of the 4th, so we hope you enjoy your Independence Day weekend and holiday.
Absolutely. Everybody, I hope, be safe. Don't pull a Jason Pierre-Paul.
Oh, man, that's rotten. And you know what? We will end with that. If you got anything for us that comes to mind, we have the fan mail. We have the fan line. The number's 203-900-4SCU. You can text that if you don't want your voice played on the air. Brian will read the questions off and answer them in a future episode, so long as it's a good question. He's going to select and handpick some of the best ones. You could always catch us on Twitter and Facebook as well, but if you prefer the old school email, it's fanmail@steelcityunderground.com. My name is Joe Kuzma. His name's Brian E. Roach. And until next time, party on, Wayne, and party on, Garth. Be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.